Hello learners, we Dr. Bhushan Bhagat and Dr. Narayan Dutt Pandey are going to discuss the MCQ of oral and maxillofacial surgery from MUHS Winter 2015 exam. It is request to you to all please watch this video in high definition or tick 3 points which is on your screen at upper right corner. Then select highest pixel for the better visibility. Coming to the first question. Protein content of less than 4 mg per ml is seen in options are dentigerous cyst, periapical cyst, keratocyst, D. periodontal cyst. So correct option is C. Keratocyst. According to the Toller, protein level less than 4 mg per ml indicated a diagnosis of OKC, which is composed of albumin and immunoglobulins. Coming to the other options like dentigerous cyst, periapical cyst, and periodontal cyst, which are non-keratinizing cyst, and the values for this non-keratinizing cyst are in the range of 5 to 10 mg per ml. Coming to the next question. Analgesics are not effective in reducing pain in options are chronic pulpitis, acute periodontitis, impacted molar, trigeminal neuralgia. So the correct option is D. Trigeminal neuralgia. For trigeminal neuralgia, analgesic is not effective. For this, first line therapy is carbamazepine or oxycarbamazepine. Second line therapy is baclofen, and the third line therapy is gabapentin. If medication are not effective or tolerated, the surgical options like peripheral neurotomy, microvascular decompression, percutaneous rhizotomies, and gamma knife radiosurgery can be used. Coming to the next question.
Question number 3. Facial paralysis resulting in drooping of the corner of the mouth and excessive lacrimation is a characteristic feature of A. Bell's palsy, B. Thick-Dolorix, C. Post-injection complication, and D. Stevens-Johnson syndrome. And the right answer is A. Bell's palsy. Bell's palsy can be defined as idiopathic paralysis of facial nerve of sudden origin resulting in paralysis of various facial muscles like muscles of the corner of the mouth or orbicularis oris resulting in drooping of the corner of the mouth, and the paralysis of orbicularis oculi resulting in excessive lacrimation. Tic-Dolorix is a term coined by Nicholas Andre in 1756 for trigeminal neuralgia. Option C is a vague option, though we know transient facial paralysis may happen due to accidental deposition of LA solution in parotid gland while giving inferior alveolar nerve block. Option D, Stevens-Johnson syndrome is a rare and serious type 4 hypersensitivity reaction in which there is abnormal mucocutaneous tissue response. Now question number 4.
Question number 4. Vital signs include which of the following? Options are temperature, pulse and blood pressure, respiration, and all of the above. So this is a straightforward option. Question. Vital signs include all of the above. That is TPR-BP, temperature, pulse rate, respiratory rate, and blood pressure. As we know, normal vital signs ranges for the average healthy adult while resting are temperature in Fahrenheit 97.8 to 99.1 degree Fahrenheit. In degree Celsius, it is a 36.5 to 37.3 degrees Celsius. Pulse rate 60 to 100 beats per minute. Respiratory rate 12 to 18 breaths per minute. And blood pressure 60 to 90 for diastolic and 80 to 120 for systolic. Coming to the next question.
Question 5. Which of the following is the preferred local anesthetic technique for hemophiliac patients? A. Nerve block, B. Supraperiosteal, C. Intraligamentary, and D. Field block. And the correct answer is intraligamentary. Hemophilia, option C is the correct answer, intraligamentary. Hemophilia is a coagulation disorder characterized by critical deficiency of coagulation factors, commonly factor 8, leading to risk of abnormal hemorrhage even to minor provocation. In general, block anesthesia injection into floor of the mouth or lingual infiltration, and IM injection must be avoided unless appropriate replacement factors have been used in patients with hemophilia. Intraligamentary injection would have lesser risk of abnormal hemorrhage because of their peripheral anatomy, having fine vessels and confined space surrounding by attached keratinized tissue and better accessibility to control bleeding if the need arise. So the right answer is option C, intraligamentary. Now coming to the next question. Post-extraction localized alveolitis or dry socket is usually characterized clinically by A, brawny indurated swelling with hyperpyrexia over 100°F. B, continuous dull pain with little or no adjacent swelling. C, attack of sharp pain and swelling. And D, local tenderness and ecchymosis of the skin and mucous membrane. The right answer is B, continuous dull pain with little or no adjacent swelling. The characteristic feature of dry socket is painful post-extraction socket that arises 2 to 3 days after extraction and may last for few days and is often resistant to common analgesics. So it is a delayed healing process commonly associated with lower molar extraction and is most likely due to lysis of fully formed clot before any granulation tissue is formed. It is generally non-progressive so that regional swelling is not commonly seen. So pain and malodor is the most consistent finding. So the right answer is B. Though regarding option A, a few untreated cases of dry socket may progress to infection that spreads through the bone marrow and can cause osteomyelitis with locoregional and systemic signs and symptoms. So brawny indurated swelling with hyperpyrexia could be a feature of osteomyelitis developing rarely as a sequel or complication to dry socket. But still, the correct answer is B. Now, question number 7. Angle fracture of mandible is best treated by A, IMF, B, open reduction with bone plating, C, open reduction with wiring, and D, cap splint. And the right answer is open reduction with bone plating. B is the right answer. Due to anatomical location of angle, strong influence of masseter and medial pterygoid on the proximal segment, and often the absence of teeth in the posterior fragment, close reduction has got limited indication in comprehensive management of angle fracture. ORIF by mini plates have become standard of treatment since initial description of ideal lines of osteosynthesis by Shimpe. Historically, wires have been used in ORIF of angle fracture, but currently most angle fracture are managed with mini plates. IMF and cap splinting are close reduction methods. All of them, including wiring, have limited indications and utility if not completely outdated. Now question number 8. In depressed zygomatic arch fracture, difficulty in opening the mouth is caused by impingement on condyles, ramus, C, petrous temporal bone, and D, coronoid process. The right answer is D, coronoid process. The reason more often cited for post-fracture trismus in zygomatic arch fracture is impingement of the translating coronoid process of mandible by the depressed arch, though another or better explanation could be temporalis muscle spasm secondary to impingement by the depressed arch. Interestingly, if the mouth is open during trauma, the patient may present with inability to achieve occlusion, but this pseudo dislocation is rare. So still the correct answer is option B, coronoid process, impingement on the coronoid process. Now the next question.
9th question. Ideal surgical approach for TMJ ankylosis is, options are endural, post-auricular, pre-auricular, and submandibular. So the correct option is C, pre-auricular. Here, the ideal requirements for choice of incision or approaches are accessibility to the TMJ, avoiding damage to the vital structures, aesthetic concern, and post-op scar, technique sensitivity. So preauricular incision and there is some modifications are there for preauricular incision. That is Blair's inverted Pistic incision, Dingman's incision, endural incision, and Thomas incision. Out of this, modified it preauricular, that is extension of the preauricular incision, that is Alcarac-Bramley incision, which is the most ideal and most commonly used. So C, preauricular incision is ideal surgical approach for TMJ and cholesis. Coming to the next question. Question number 10. Degree of diplopia can most accurately be recorded by Glasgow scale, measurement of visual acuity, counting the REM, option D, Hess chart. So the correct option is D, Hess chart. Hess chart is used for ocular paralysis and ocular restrictive conditions. As we know, in diplopia, there is a perception of two images of a single object as a result of impaired functions of orbital muscles. During trauma, there may be injury to the cranial nerve, that is the third, fourth, and sixth cranial nerves, or entrapment of muscles as in blowout fracture. Coming to the other options like Glasgow scale, it is a diagnosis for head injury. Option B, measurement of visual acuity, especially for oculomotor nerve. And option C, counting REM, that is a rapid eye movement, which is for sleep disorder. Coming to the next question, shortness of breath, air hunger, or difficulty in breathing is, options are hypopnea, hypoxia, dyspnea, and orthopnea. So the correct option is C, dyspnea. Dyspnea is also known as shortness of breath. Breathing discomfort can due to bronchial asthma, pneumonia, or due to different pulmonary or cardiac diseases. So coming to the other options like hyperopnea, it is an increased volume of air during the breathing. It can cause because of physiologic or metabolic. Option B, hypoxia, it is a condition of lack of adequate oxygen supply to the tissue, can be because of pathology or physiology. Option D, orthopnea, is also shortness of breath, but it is especially when lying flat position. Typically, it is a features of cardiac diseases. Coming to the next question.
Question number 12. A palatal flap has high success rate in the management of oroantral fistula because A, abundance of tissue, B, branch of palatal artery is also mobilized, C, it is resistant to infection, and D, less chances of tear. Here the options are debatable and more than one answer appears right. I will give you my answer and possible explanation. The right answer appears to me is the option D, less chances of tear. Good quality and texture of palatal flap provides resistance to tear, which in turn allows better harvesting with lesser risk of vessel damage, predictable tissue transfer and its primary closure, relative resistance against dehiscence, and better maintenance during post-op period. All these features guarantees higher success rate. So in my view, the right answer is D, less chances of tear. Other advantages may include relatively simple anatomy of the tissue, abundant keratinized tissue and vascularity, creation of sensate flap, minimal donor site morbidity. Flap can be based on single neurovascular supply, up to 10 centimeter of tissue availability, which is quite reasonable, and large arc of rotation and lesser post-op infection rate. Question number 13. The most common facial neuralgia involves which of the following nerves? A, trigeminal and glossopharyngeal, B, trigeminal and hypoglossal, C, trigeminal and facial, and D, glossopharyngeal and facial nerve. This is a factual question and the answer is A, trigeminal neuralgia and glossopharyngeal neuralgia. International Association for Study of Pain defined it as pain in the territory of one nerve. So neuralgia is defined as pain in the territory of one nerve. Theoretically, each cranial nerve carrying sensory fibers may be prone to cause neuralgia. Most often, trigeminal neuralgia occurs, followed by occipital and glossopharyngeal neuralgia, and neuralgia of intermediate nerve of and of superior laryngeal nerve. Now the question number 14. All of the following play a role in hemostasis except A, blood vessel, B, blood platelet, C, albumin, and D, prothrombin. And the correct answer is C, albumin. Normal coagulation. Vascular phase is mainly controlled by blood vessels and involves vasoconstriction and exposure of subendothelial tissue to circulating von Willebrand factor. In platelet phase, hemostatic platelet plug is formed by platelet adhesion and aggregation. In coagulation phase, various coagulation factors participate in extrinsic, intrinsic, and common pathway and facilitates coagulation. In fibrinolytic phase, tissue-type plasminogen activator is released by injured endothelial cell to initiate lysis. So, considering all all vessel wall, platelet, and prothrombin, they all participate in hemostasis. Albumin is the right answer. Though things to know is that albumin is the main protein produced in the liver. The main function of the protein is maintaining intravascular colloid osmotic pressure, neutralize toxin, and transport and metabolism of therapeutic agents. Albumin may also be required for normal platelet function and coagulation, but they do not play direct dominant role. So the correct answer of all this is option C, albumin plays do not play definite role in hemostasis. Now the next question.
Question number 15. Among the following, which results in sudden swelling in the area of dental injections? Options are drug incompatibility, paravascular injection, infection, inadvertently nicking blood vessels during the injection. So the correct option is D. Here, this question we had discussed in previous presentation. Inadvertently nicking to arterial vessels causes a sudden dumbbell-shaped swelling, but most common swelling is somewhat late appearing, which is because of venous hematoma. Coming to the next question, question number 16. A patient on dental chair complains of sudden compressive pain in the chest, which is lasts for a few seconds. He should be treated with options are nitroglycerin, steroid, dextrose, and aspirin. So the correct option is A, nitroglycerin. Sudden compressive pain in the chest suggestive of angina. In this situation, the dental procedures should be postponed and give sublingual nitroglycerin. The patient is sent to the physician for further evaluation of cardiac diseases. Coming to the next question. Symptoms of Guerin fracture is options are circumorbital ecchymosis, paresthesia, CSF rhinorrhea, ecchymosis in the buccal sulcus beneath the zygomatic buttress. So the correct option is D, ecchymosis in the buccal sulcus beneath the zygomatic buttress. Here, Guerin fracture is a Lufort 1 fracture. There is no involvement of eye. So options A and B are not correct. Also, there is no involvement of ethmoid bone. So option C is also not correct. So more correct is D, ecchymosis in the buccal sulcus beneath the zygomatic buttress. Coming to the next question.
How do we eliminate dead space? A, suturing tissue planes together. B, suturing placing pressure dressing on wound. C, placing drains, and D, all of the above. The right answer is, it's a practical based question, and the right answer is all of the above. It is a dead space is a space that remains devoid of any tissue after closure of the wound. It is created as a result of tissue excision in depth of the wound and single layer approximation. That is suturing not done in layers. So this space will be filled with the hematoma. So how to avoid this space? Multiple layer suturing whenever possible, pressure dressing, surgical packing of the defect with medicated ribbon gauze whenever indicated, and use of drains. Now the next question. Post-surgical edema reaches its peak on A, 48 to 72 hours, B, after 3 days, C, immediately after extraction, and D, none of the above. And the right answer is 48 to 72 hours. That is option A. Pain and swelling are a usual consequences of any surgical insult to the body because of production of inflammatory mediators such as leukotrienes, prostaglandins, and thromboxane A2. Most swelling reaches a peak in 24 to 48 hours and then gradually plateau begins to dissipate over the next 48 to 72 hours. This is a fact. So factors which may contribute to this increased swelling are complex or traumatic extraction, excessive retraction, and the length of operating time. We know that steroids and NSAIDs are helpful in reducing the inflammation and swelling. So consider option A as the right answer for this question. Now the question number 20.
The last question, perpendicular drawn from the amber line to an imaginary point of application of elevator is, the correct option is C, trade line. So trade line, it is an imaginary line drawn perpendicular from amber line to an imaginary point of application of an elevator, usually at a cement to enamel junction. So red line indicates the amount of bone that will have to be removed before the elevation of the tooth. With increase in a length of red line by 1 mm, the impacted tooth becomes 3 times more difficult to remove. So it is according to the Jeffrey Hoy's opinion. So if red line is more than 5 mm, tooth can be removed under general anesthesia or conscious sedation. It will be more appropriate to remove under GA or conscious sedation. Thank you. Thank you for listening and giving a lot of response to us. Happy learning and start loving the subject. Thank you.